Yorana tato, kura ora kia koto katonga. Hello to all of you. This is our story tonight. This is a story about Tearikituohea. It came from the island of Hao in the eastern Tuamotuan archipelago. And the Tuamotuan Islands, for those who don't know, they are east of Tahiti. And it's like a long chain of islands. And the islands don't have mountains on them. They consist of a coral, they're atolls. They consist of a coral reef that surrounds a central lagoon. And along the coral reef, there are sandbars, and that's where there's vegetation, that's where the people live. And the story is about Tearikituohea, and he was, in the genealogies of Hao, he appears, and he lived in about 1600. And the source of this story is from the field notes of John Frank Stimson, because he was this anthropologist, and in the 1920s and the 1930s, he'd go to the Tuamotu Islands, and he would interview the experts, the old sages, and have them write down in notebooks the information, such as chants and genealogies and lists of names, and they'd write down stories in Tuamotuan, and he would translate them. And the source, the informants that he had from Hao, was a guy named Teaku Apuranga and Teufe Atuhakam Tutiamaru. And I know at least one of them was born in about 1875 and died in about 1935. So that's kind of like the age or the time period for the knowledge that about this story. So this guy Tearikituohea his father was named Nomakai Tangata. Okay, yeah, and one of the things in this story is, I translated this from Tuamotuan, about 99% of it. And there's some parts of the story, there's words or phrases I don't quite fully understand. And so I've made an educated guess about what it meant, okay? And it makes sense in the context of the story. So, Tearikituohea, his father's name was Nomakai Tangata, and his mother was Ruakairoro. And Nomakai Tangata means Noma, the eater of men. And Ruakairoro means the whole that eats brains. And when they first, were living together, they had their first child, and that was Tearikituohea. And when he was born, he was Finau Tuputupuahiamai. He was born as a spirit. I don't know what that means, okay? But he did have 4 eyes. He had 4 eyes. And after this, the father he lived with his second wife, and her name was Tevehinituheariki. She happens to be the sister of the first wife, okay, in the genealogies. And she gave birth to 10 children. Huri papa tutiakamea porofana tua uta tuatai, rotoroa mapuna heava tu horopunga tu koporoa te vananga and ramea. Porofana and the third and ramea, ifanau tangata hiamai. They were born as people. The other 8, ifanau tuputupu hiamai, born as spirits. I don't know what that means. And in the context of the story, they just seem to be like all normal people, okay? And the first 9 were sons, and the Raumea was their younger sister, was their sister. And when Nomakai Tangata, when Tearikituohea was born, his parents, nobody knew. His parents didn't tell anybody because they saw he was born as a spirit. He had 4 eyes. They didn't tell anybody so that no one would know. And in time, Nomakai Tangata, he had the idea to take their infant and take him down to Tonga Nui and abandon him there. Because in Hao, you've got the northern part where the people live, and there's this part called Tonga Nui, which means the Great South. And down there's nobody living there. And so the father's idea was take the baby down to the part of Hao where there's nobody and abandon him there. And he talked to his wife, and she agreed. So the wife, she went and got their stuff ready for their excursion on their canoe. And they got in their canoe and they took the baby down there and they got down to Tonga Nui. And then the father went up on the land looking for food. And basically he was fishing. And as he was going around fishing, he said magic words. He tote takarari, tote heinua, totarangi, totaroki. He said magic words to the spirits of the sea. Takarari. To the spirits of the sea, the spirits of the land, the spirits of the sky, and the spirits of the night world, that they would take care of this infant that he was going to abandon there. And when he got enough of his fish, he took like a piece of hibiscus bark and strung it through the gills of the fish, and he had kind of like a fish necklace. And he took the fish necklace and he gave it back to his wife, came back to the canoe, gave her the fish necklace, the string of fish, and then she gave him the infant. And he took the infant up under the land, and he left the infant, Tearikituohea, on this thing called Tuamotuan, which means the foundation of the night world. What that is, I don't fully understand. Was it a rock? Was it a door where you could go down into the night world, the land under the land? I don't really know. As best as I can tell, maybe it was some kind of a special rock. He left the baby on Tuamotuan, the foundation of the night world. Went back to the canoe. Him and his wife went up to the northern part of Hao. And then, they abandoned their baby. And the story, as I was told, is that, okay, Tearikituohea, he grew up. And what I was told is that he was taken care of by the spirits of his ancestors. And when he grew up, what he would do is he'd run around and he would spy on people when they came down to Tonga Nui. And he would kill them and eat them. And so what would happen is people would go down to Tonga Nui to go fishing or whatever, and they wouldn't come back because Tearikituohea got them. And so what happened is one day, the oldest son of Nomakai Tangata, the half Nomakai Tangata, the oldest son of Nomakai Tangata's second wife, his name was Huripapa. He went to his father and he said, how is it that people disappear when they go down to Tonga Nui? Is there a warrior living down there who's killing the people? And the father, Nomakai Tangata, he said to his son, Huripapa, you go get your brothers and your sister and you come to me. And I have something to tell you guys. So Huripapa went and got his siblings and they all came to their father and sat around him or whatever. And he said, and the father said, don't you guys go down to Tonga Nui. You will be obtained by your older brother because he's my firstborn son with my first wife, Ruakairoro. And he was born as a spirit. He's got 4 eyes. And when I die, and because he was born as a spirit, we took him down there and abandoned him. When I die, what I will do, when I die, what I am going to do is I'm going to say magic words, not to talk with your, when I die, I will say magic words with your younger brothers in the night world. And we will do it, not to takarari, not to heinua, not to rangi, not to ruki. We're going to do magic words on the sea, the land, the sky, and the night world. And you guys can say magic words in this world. And then you'll be able to overcome your brother, Tearikituohea. So these are my words to you guys. And so what happened was, after this, sometime after this, Nomakai Tangata, he died. And what would happen is people would go down to Tonga Nui, and Tearikituohea would get them and eat them, and they wouldn't come back. And Tearikituohea, he had mana, he had this spiritual power. But his brothers and his sister also had mana. And the time came and they decided, we got to take care of Tearikituohea. So what they did is they prepared their journey. They got in their canoe and they went down to Tonga Nui. And they're on their canoe. And they got down at Tonga Nui and they went fishing. And they were looking for these fish that's called heiave, like the roroa heiave, the tapata heiave, and the urua heiave, and other kinds of fish that are heiave. Now, what does heiave mean? I don't know. As best as I can tell, it means poisonous, because you're going to see in the context of the story that it's going to do something to Tearikituohea. So they got these fish, and when they got the fish, they said magic words, itote takarari, tote hinua, tote rangi, tote ruki, to the spirits of the sea, the land, the sky, and the night world, so that when Tearikituohea ate these fish, his thoughts would be chased away. And as best as I can tell, that means he would get stupid. And so they were looking on the land and they saw Tearikituohea. And so they took their fish string necklace and they organized it so it looked good. They made like a fish necklace by stringing hibiscus bark through the gills of the fish, sort of like a necklace she could hold. And they said magic words over the fish. And they gave the fish to their sister, Araumea. And they wept over her, and they rubbed noses with her, which is like a way to say goodbye. And they say, you take these fish up onto the land, and you give them to your brother Tearikituohea. And if he grabs you, like embraces you, drop off your clothing, and you tell him, eat the fish first, and then we can sleep together. And so she went up onto the land, and the brothers in the canoe, they were saying magic words, Nate takarari, nate henua, nate rangi, nate ruki, so that Tearikituohea's thoughts would be chased away. And when Araumea got up onto the land, Tearikituohea, he came to her, and she offered him the fish necklace. And he didn't take the fish necklace. He grabbed her, and she dropped off her clothes. And Tearikituohea, he was so surprised when he saw her. And he said, let's go sleep together. She said, eat the fish first, then we'll sleep together. Okay, so he went up on the top of the beach, the top of the beach, and he ate the fish. And when he ate the fish, his thoughts got chased away. He forgot about Araumea. He forgot about eating the fish. And he stood up, and he was thinking he was going to go to this place called Rotorua. And he started to walk, because he had like these huts there, like a sleeping hut and a cooking hut. And he started walking there, to Rotorua. And as he's walking, his sister goes back into the canoe. And she's in the canoe, and they're following him. And they're actually saying, Kamate, Kamate, Kamate. May he die, may he die, may he die. They're wishing that upon their brother. And he's walking along. And he got to this one place about halfway down. And he fell down. And he stood back up. And he was kind of like, couldn't find the path. He was kind of like he was confused. Like maybe he got stupid or something. And he thought he'd turn around and he'd start walking to this other place. And he started walking. And they were following him in their canoe. And he'd walk and fall down. Get up. Walk some more. Fall down. And this happened several times. He'd walk and fall down. Finally, he got to this one place and he fell down. He got to Tuamotuan, the foundation of the night world, and he fell down on it. And his brothers and his sister, and he didn't get up anymore. And his brothers and his sister, they went up onto the land, and he was lying there, and they were talking like, what are we going to do with him? Where do we take him to? They were thinking of taking him to this place called Teuna. But then they decided they would take him to this place called Nikau, which is the place where he first ate the fish, where his thoughts ran away from him. And he's lying there, and he's reciting this poem he'd composed about himself. Takufari tu hao. Takumata, keinanga te kiro. My house, my eyes, my relatives are bad. And they took him, and they carried him in the canoe, and they put him in the canoe. And then they were taking him up to Nikau. And he's sitting in the canoe, and he's reciting this poem about Takufari. And they got to Nikau, and he was lying there, and he was dead. And so what they did is they took him up onto the canoe, onto the land, and they laid him there. Okay? And then they said magic words over him. Tote takarari, tote henua, tote rangi, tote ruki, to the spirits of the land, of the sea, the land, the sky, and of the night world. And then they went back on their canoe, and they went up to the northern part of Hao. And that was then when they could go down to Tonga Nui, and they would come back, because Tearikituohea wasn't down there anymore to kill them and eat them. And after that, about the time of Mununui, he lived a couple of generations. Mununui is his chief in Hao. He lived a couple of generations later. And after his time, what people would do when they saw one another, they'd say, Kuroora, which means red feathers of life. It was a greeting, like how to say hello. And then they would respond, Kuroora. Unless, of course, if they had come to fight, you'd say Kuroora to them, and they'd go Kuramate. You'd say red feathers of life, and their response is red feathers of death, and then they would fight you, okay? These are the words of the ancient people that they have told us all the way down to these days. These words are done. In this story, there's two messages that I see in this story. The first message is, it seems to me that this is a story about what it means to be a human being. Tearikituohea, in form, he was a human, except for the 4 eyes. But he wasn't raised by people. He did not socialize with people. And then he did not observe taboos. The thing about eating people, I think at least most of the time, I presume that was a taboo. Although there are instances of cannibalism in Tuamotuan stories, okay, like as parts of for revenge purposes. And then also, like, he had a romantic interest in his sister, which is, as best as I could tell, is a taboo, and is always a taboo. And so, what does it mean to be a human? You socialize with people, and you observe the taboos, okay? And then the second thing in this story is, there's a poem that was composed, that's been handed down, that was supposedly composed by Tearikituohea. And it goes like this. Eriki nui huki Tearikituohea, no tonga nui nei, no tonga raharaha, otaku kakahu nei, tarangi ma keri keri, tarangi whakahua. Which means, Tearikituohea is a great chief indeed. From the wide south, from Tonga Nui, from the big south, that's Tonga Nui, from the wide south. My clothing is the dark blue sky, the angry sky that blows the waves under the land. And that's Tearikituohea. He's describing his feelings. I mean, he was abandoned by his parents, raised by the spirits of his ancestors, didn't socialize with people, didn't have the interactions with people. And then eventually, he's eating people and not obeying taboos because maybe he didn't know. And his relatives get together, they conspire, and then they poison him and he dies. And so he's saying, I am the angry sky that blows the waves under the land. He's like, that's his anger or his frustration or his sadness. So he's a sad character, Tearikituohea. Ko hope te irako. These words are done.